Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Walk the Block, where we are navigating digital finance all together. I'm your host for the evening, Zenith, as always, and I'm joined by an excellent cast of characters here tonight. Up first, we have our good friend Tracker. How you doing, my man?
Doing well, man. I'm glad to get everybody back here. It's been a little while. Feels good to get this back in motion again. I'm excited to go over a lot of stuff, a lot of good things developing, and let's hit it. Let's do it.
Love it. And our third member of the panel today, we have Dace. How you doing, my man?
I'm well, sir. I'm well. Keeping quite busy and excited to be here. Yeah, look, it's been eventful few weeks in crypto since we've been on, so I'm excited to get the team back together.
Love to hear it. Yes, I might be at blame for that. We took about a 2-week vacation traveling Europe, but I will say I was in Italy and I took a pasta making class, so we officially know how to do that. We learned from the experts, so we should be good to go.
That's amazing. Add it to the resume. That's awesome. Congrats.
Hey, much appreciated, much appreciated. And before we get going, we do want to give a shout out to our fourth member of Walk the Block, who's not with us tonight because he's doing a lot of other stuff behind the scenes, and most importantly, behind the paywall over in our Telegram community. That is Agent J, aka P90 Hex on the Twitters, or X now. And if you want to catch all of his market update streams, and he is cranking out a lot of those, giving out a lot of great information, you got to go over to walktheblockndf.com, go to the membership tab, and that is where you can join up. But yes, that being said, gentlemen, let's get into it. We're going to start off with our first topic of the evening. We have Circle, aka the creators of USDC. They want to make their own bank to control USDC reserves. So, coming to us from CCN, Circle is doubling down on its vision to bring digital finance into the regulatory mainstream, this time by becoming a bank. Fresh off its blockbuster IPO, the company behind the USDC stablecoin has applied to establish a first national digital currency bank, a federally regulated trust institution that would directly manage USDC reserves and provide custody services to institutions. The goal: bring stablecoin operations under the same federal oversight as traditional banks and get ahead of upcoming legislation that could reshape the digital dollar landscape. If approved by the OCC, Circle's Trust Bank would act as the official custodian of USDC reserves. It would also serve as a regulatory anchor as stablecoins like USDC become increasingly integrated into everyday financial infrastructure. Coming to us from Circle CEO Jeremy Allaire, he says, quote, "Establishing a national digital currency trust bank of this kind marks a significant milestone in our goal to build an internet financial system that is transparent, efficient, and accessible." Anchorage Digital is the only crypto-native firm with a federal trust charter. Circle hopes to join that list and, in doing so, secure some long-term regulatory clarity. All right off the rip, gentlemen. How big of news would you say this is?
Well, for me, it's the evolution. So it's big news because this is the next step. That is. So there's two ways to look at it. There's pros and cons to this problem, right? The pros are you're seeing the financial industry that's been lagging technology starting to grow and mature, much like how companies adopted the internet in the 90s and the 2000s, and social media, the evolution of connecting more partners and be able to provide more products. And this is something you're seeing with the next phase. So you've got stable coins. We already know the bills that have been passed. We already know that stable coins are absolutely being accumulated. We know that stable coins are going to be used to acquire US treasuries. That's already in process. Now the next wave is, let's go ahead and tell Circle that went just recently, over just 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, create an IPO that went parabolic, right? And now keep in mind that IPO release on Circle, they had to raise the IPO price multiple times because of the demand. And then it still didn't satisfy it. That's why you saw this massive run up. You had people like Kathy Wood from ARK Investment and everything that were getting in on that IPO at $38 shares. Of course, they recently came out and said they dumped towards the very top, which is that $300 price target. But don't be fooled. This is the parabolic move up. Could Circle still kind of pull back down a little bit more? Certainly could, but you're seeing the early stages, much like social media did with Facebook and how it came out and it pulled back, then it started moving up. It's the same thing. So you're seeing the evolution of the financial industry moving into using these new products, which are stable coins. And we haven't even got into smart contracts yet. Okay, we're still on that cusp, but once they work the smart contracts out, you're going to tell me banks aren't going to be jumping over hand over fist to try to acquire these crypto and stable coins to earn more than what their other bonds or other low risk investments can hold, they're going to start acquiring those too. And don't get me wrong, this isn't like an isolated event. They've already been having many companies already starting to accumulate Bitcoin and Ethereum on their balance sheets for hedging inflation. So now the institution's creating this bank entity in place. And by the way, there's somebody else also created, I forgot who it was, but there's another big player. It's also trying to follow in the same suit. But if you're going to build a bank, well, banks get, especially at this caliber, they're saying it's going to be it's a federal bank. Isn't it correct? Isn't it a federal bank?
I believe so.
So at this bank level, they're trying to create, there's one thing that banks get. They get special privileges too. This is another protective layer for Circle. So once you become a banking institution, certainly if you're going to be a central bank or a federal central bank, there's so much more protection you get. So it's not a question, is this going to pass or it's a formality. It's going to all happen because look who owns Circle. And we already know who the major players are. It's all the people you would expect. Of course, the big boy in there is BlackRock, who's in there as far as one of the big holders. They're the ones that actually were making deals with Circle. It's funny because it was almost like 2-3 years ago during the bear market when it was really bad. Basically, Circle was told by BlackRock, you're going to let us acquire some of your shares, period. You're going to let us buy some of this stuff. And that was kind of the beginning of letting Circle get in. And now you see them now coming to fruition of being actually a traded stock on the US stock exchange. So to me, it's just the next steps of evolution. And I think when they get into smart contracts, then you get into tokenization. So if you got a roadmap, we're kind of like in the middle. We're not of getting the structures in place. Once you lay this out, things are going to start moving pretty quickly. And you're seeing investors already doing this. Some people have price targets for Circle already coming in at $300 a share for at the end of the year, which it hit that earlier on the IPO. After 2 weeks, it just went parabolic. So it could still have plenty of room to go up. But don't forget, not just Circle, but you got Coinbase now is almost like the custodian of the US crypto market. Circle's now going to be kind of the stable coin digital finance now with the banking system behind it in place. So you're seeing kind of the early phases of the Facebooks, the Googles, the Amazons kind of taking form in the financial world of digital. But I'll pause there and let you guys speak on it.
Jace, what you got?
Yeah, I mean, Tracker, what you said at the top is right. Like, it's certainly news, but it's also the next logical step in things. I think it is clear that the fact this is happening before the staking rules for the ETFs are passed tells you they're leaving no daylight between their product offerings and the feature offerings, and being sort of the market leader for this type of a product. That was sort of my big take from it. So I anticipate seeing a serious Ethereum price performance when the staking features are passed, and this to me serves as a bit of confirmation on that general thesis.
Makes sense to me. And Tracker, I thought you had a really good analogy there, saying like this is when you watch Facebook kind of come into the rise for crypto. Granted, it kind of felt like we had all the MySpaces, the Mevos, if anyone even remembers what that one is, but all those other exchanges that have like gone up and failed. I'm looking at like Mt. Gox, Terra Luna, FTX, all that kind of stuff. We've had some people start and pioneer, then ultimately they failed. Those ones largely due to things other than just people moving to the hot new platform, but something related to a crazy island down in the Caribbean where the cult leader did weird things, but that's neither here nor there. But for Sam Bankman-Fried, that did land him in prison. But what we're seeing here is I think that Circle actually tried to establish this bank for USDC. This has been one of the big question marks that we've been seeing, which is that cryptocurrency is trying to separate itself from the traditional finance markets. At the same time, though, I think what they're going for with a move like this is they're trying to appeal to some of those old traditional regulations that are coming in. What's the depositor credit agency? It's blanking me right now. FDIC? Yeah, the federal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one. So
correct.
The FDIC protects people that have bank accounts up to, was it $250,000, just to ensure that if there's ever a run on the bank or it collapses or something, the
Right.
actual people that put money in the bank are protected. In the crypto space, we don't have any of that stuff right now. So stuff like this, it seems like a bit of a play to get towards that. But the other half of this is that I do think, like you said, they're trying to front run this a bit. They're trying to get it in before we actually see the Genius Act come through Congress, before we see the staking ETFs get approved as well, and before we see a ton of the other ETFs get approved as well. There's a lot of stuff in the works right now, and we're starting to see moves like this start to happen more. I covered it last night with Will over on DGen Roundtable, but Coinbase is trying to get their own launch pad going before they actually have like official regulation for it. There were hints by the SEC for that kind of thing, but Coinbase is actually trying to like front run that one as well. So I think there's a lot of interest right now in people trying to front run stuff and be the first one in, because I think they saw, you might say it's just from traditional business mindset, or you can see what Bitcoin did, is that if you're the first in, best dressed, that's a really good foot up on the competition.
Oh yeah, absolutely. First time to market over your competitors is always going to get you recognition. I mean, look at Bitcoin. I mean,
Well, yeah, I was going to say, not only Bitcoin, but you look at Coinbase, right? First mover in the market. Fast forward a little bit, and you can also look at Grayscale for the futures ETFs and how much they capitalized, seeing the spot ETFs into the future and launching those futures products ahead of time. So yeah, the first mover advantage is strong in this game.
Yeah. No, that's actually a great point. Grayscale they were lightning years ahead of everybody else. They were coming out with so many products. It was crazy. 3 years ago, they had top 10 market diversified ETFs. They have for various crypto. It was crazy. They had so many products already out there. They were definitely one of the first ones out there to really push and move quick. But that was a good point you brought up too, Zenith, on the protections of the FDIC, on all these things that the banks get to, all these features that the banks get, basically a white glove service and all this extra perks. And if you think about it, that FDIC is going to be critical, because especially for retirement funds, right? If you're buying spot ETFs and things like that, that's really your only exposure to any crypto that's going to be protected by the FDIC. Now, don't get me wrong, there are other products out there like, and I'm not promoting any of these. I'm not with them anymore. I don't get anything for saying this, but like iTrust Capital is another one that's out there that was one that you could use your traditional retirement fund to buy crypto. And it was very much like a central exchange, very simple, but you could go out there and buy various, I think a basket of about 40 to 50 cryptos you could buy and get that exposure. But with this, it's interesting because banks have so many products that they can now bundle. And honestly, if you think about it, they could almost bundle it, but it's the back end is the digital aspect of it, yet it's still going to be, from a customer standpoint, it's going to feel and look the same, but it's going to have all the perks. So it won't be that much of an adoption or change for new users to come into that experience, because they're going to package it. They're going to put that abstract layer on the front of everything, so it seems almost seamless to the customers is what they're probably going to do, or even the banks, that for that matter, and working with other banks. But yeah, I think now the sinister side of me is, I always have to go back to it. The sinister side of me is, are we moving into where they're going to tokenize everything and it's going to be CBDCs and all this stuff? And unfortunately, we still have to consider that, because, I mean, anybody wants to sit here and tell me I'm talking crazy, all these pieces that are getting laid out are laying the foundation for that. Now, forget CBDCs. If they tokenize and go down stable coins, and that's going to be what has to be used, and everything's tokenized.
Yeah, no, I agree, man.
Yeah. So it's a double-edged sword. Is it great for investors now doing all this? Yeah. And the downside, technology is great, but it's only how good is it being used, right? I mean, we have social media. People like it. They were using it all back in the day. And now you see a great example is, so social media, people are out there using it, putting all this stuff out there in the world to their friends and making it all public. Everybody didn't realize they were going to do a background check, and they're going to start scanning your social media, and it can knock you. So you got to be careful. Now you got to be careful. This is all those worries that people have, that more control, more things being put into place. And I'll go back to it as well, and I'll keep bringing it up. Project Stargate. It's a $500 billion US project, and their whole goal is to centralize data specifically in Azure, Microsoft's cloud. Right now, they're focusing on insurance companies or healthcare providers, and that are focusing strictly on Medicare, Medicaid, and they're going to centralize all that data into these hubs. This is nothing new. You can go out there. This is all over mainstream media. This isn't some crazy wacko experience, craziness talking. They're going to centralize this data, and it's a big push for that. So if you centralize everything and you move to tokenization and you move to stable coins, you got these new banks in place. All the pieces are in place to do as you see fit. So with all this stuff, it's great and it's exciting, but at the same time, we all have to lean towards some caution. That's all I'm trying to say.
That's fair. Again, I talked with Will about it yesterday. We covered an article. I think there's 49 countries that actually have some sort of test plan out there, or test, or like beta for CBDCs. China is obviously a big one with the social credit score being integrated into it. But we also have smaller countries like Jamaica and Nigeria joined that list recently as well. So I harped on yesterday, and we're very happy to reiterate it here, is that I think CBDCs are a 0 to 1 moment, or rather they're a 1 to 0 moment, which is that once you have one, it's only downhill from there. The silver lining here, though, I think, is that if you can actually get stablecoins with blockchain technology to be the dominant force ahead of a CBDC, then that is going to be something that can stave it off or potentially prevent it from happening. So for the naysayers of the stablecoin bill coming up and this kind of stuff, I think that this could actually be a hedge against CBDCs if you view it in that light and you ensure that the admin controls stay with people that are trustworthy and are principled, and that it doesn't become too centralized in that way. I think that one thing we see right now is that there's multiple stablecoins out there that are well used, and a lot of them are in circulation. Right now, USDC, I think, is actually the number 2 stablecoin. I think Tether right now is actually beaten it out by a significant margin, I will say. We even have other stuff like DAI in there, which is an algorithmic stablecoin. So there's lots of options. But when we see an article like the one we just pulled up there showing that Circle is really trying to drive the argument here, I think that's them maybe trying to claim back some of that market share and also try to really stabilize themselves to regain that number 1 spot.
I agree. And I think that it's worth mentioning the relationship between Circle and BlackRock. So BlackRock is a strategic investor in Circle. They did a $400 million raise, which gave them a minor equity stake. And they also separately managed the USDC reserve assets. And so, and Coinbase in turn domiciles their ETF holdings. That way they're not on paper, supposedly too decentralized. To me, it says that you are you're trying to use the maximum amount of leverage and use the maximum amount of input and customers to compete against Tether, right? Against the big dog. And if you're going to sequester sort of, all of that economic firepower into one giant economic machine, that's what it looks like, right? You've got the Coinbase component, the BlackRock component, and the Circle component. They all are interestingly interlinked.
I think that makes complete sense. When we're operating at this scale, especially now that traditional finance is in the crypto space, you really got to take a look at who all is invested in each other. It's kind of incestuous when you get up to the top there, which is like BlackRock owns a good bit of Fidelity, Fidelity owns a good bit of BlackRock, and there's just kind of like a circle at the top, and they all kind of slightly own each other. So when it comes to managing these kinds of resources, yeah, it feels like there might be a lot of people that have a hand on that steering wheel.
Oh, it's even worse than that. It's the big 3. It's Vanguard, State Street, and BlackRock. They own about 90% of the S&P, about 90% of everything, as far as that matter. And then luckily, and then on top of that, they've been buying up real estate hand over fist lately. The real estate market's been really shaken up over the last 2 to 3 years, because their goal is by, I hate to throw it out because I know the conspiracy theorists are going to love this one, but 2030, that's always the one that keeps floating around. But in 2030, their goal is to control close to 1/3 of all real estate in the United States. And that's also residential markets too. That's their goal, whether they get to it or not, but that's the goal.
For sure. I think, but the thing is, Tracker, I think a lot of people, or more people, realize the conventional, the nature of the conventional markets, and be it real estate or stocks, when it comes to those high level conglomerates, but the nature to which it's also true in crypto, right, is something that I think is lost on people. When people think crypto, they think the Wild West, and they think that it's, for the people, by the people. But it's, these people are definitely, they are here. They're as here as they could possibly be.
Oh, no, but don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, I think the problem is that I think most generations are aware of what's going on, or at least somewhat aware of what's going on. The boomer generation they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it. And unfortunately, trust me, I have these conversations and it just falls on deaf ears most of the time. There's some outliers, I'm sure. But going back to the CBDCs, I mean, look at what the experiment that was done in Africa with Nigeria. They tried to institute it. They had to roll it back because there was such outrage. And there was major pushbacks, and they already had the digital ID cards. They had the whole nine already locked and loaded, ready to go. And there was major pushback. They were cutting people down to where they could only deposit $100 at a time of their currency, or $50 daily. Like, they really had limited to what you could get cash wise, but there was basically a big pushback. So, and they've been doing it in other countries. So there's these experiments going on around the world. They're trying to see what can work. And ultimately what it comes down to is the people that are in power, that control most of the financial institutions, they want to retain that power, and they're going to do everything they can in their power to make sure that's the case. This is exactly why Circle really didn't have a choice whether or not BlackRock was able to get in or not. They were kind of basically told this was going to happen. So, and that happened like 3 years ago or so. But I mean, I guess what I'm saying, this is the evolution. It's coming whether you like it or not. This is the next step, and I think there's this. So the next step. So let's talk about the next step. So the bank's going live. Cool. Next step. Now the Genius Act is going to get passed. All this stuff's going to get passed. It's like I said, it's not if, it's just a win. So it's going to get passed. Then they're going to get the green light for smart contracts. That's going to happen. Institutions then are going to pounce onto that. And like you said, I think Zenith, you said the front running aspect. 100%. And I think you brought up the whole fact that Coinbase was already trying to front run. Are you talking about them building out the base platform and trying to get the staking models into place?
Nope. This is something entirely new. It's a launch pad. They're trying to effectively take the pump.fund model of making it easier to launch your own cryptos. And they want to be the place to do that. I think one of the ideas with that is that they want to make it easier to launch crypto projects that are more sophisticated than meme coins. And if you can do it on Coinbase, guess what's probably very easily tradable on Coinbase? That. In that sense, it's kind of them trying to launch a new product where they already own the casino.
Well, all right. But is there going to be some type of like regulation? Are they going to try to screen some of this, or is it just going to be just a bunch of pump and dump schemes popping out all over Coinbase like it's been on all these other apps?
It's unclear, but I imagine that Coinbase is not going to be a good Samaritan just doing this for free, meaning that the people that are going to be flocking to this kind of thing are going to be people with a little bit of money to invest up front, not just promise them some like amount of the supply, but actually pay them some cold hard cash to get it going. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm seeing over there. Again, there's no official regulation for launch pads from the SEC. They've mentioned it. They've hinted at it. There's even a press release that came out somewhat recently. But aside from that, there's nothing hard on it. And they're trying to front run it a bit.
Interesting. I feel like Coinbase is going to be like, if I had to equate to the big tech companies, Coinbase is what Amazon is for the financial institution. And then you've got Circle, which is more equivalent to probably what Google is as far as the spider effect, or the how far it reaches into everywhere. But I don't know, that's how I'm seeing. I'm fully invested in Coinbase. I've been invested in Circle. I've been invested in all these products because the writing's on the wall. We've all been here long enough to know. And the reason I'm in there is I'm spreading around retirement funds where I want to get exposure to certain things. And those are the things I'd like to, if I'm going to be betting on, whether it's, spot ETFs or that, I want to try to get as much exposure as I can because the writing's all over the wall. It's going to happen. I think people who don't understand what's coming, and I know Dace, you alluded to this and you were talking about it, that I don't think people quite understand what's happening underlying crypto, because you're not going to see this on 60 Minutes. You're not going to see this on any mainstream or Time magazine. You're not going to see this stuff anywhere, what's going on. And that's the reasoning why, because they want to be able to front run this and get everything in place before they start to open it up. By the time you hear about it on the mainstream and everything that's going on, like what has actually now transpired and it's going to be years after the fact or so. They're going to release it out to everybody when they want everybody to know about it. It's kind of like how FedNow was done. FedNow was done very close. There wasn't hardly any whole information out there on FedNow. I don't remember. I mean, was there a 60 Minutes article on FedNow?
Not that I remember.
Only 7% of the world's population is invested in crypto, right? Last time I was in my local Chase Bank branch, I asked them if they were aware of the new rules about banks being allowed to hold crypto. And she said, what new rules? And so,
Dude,
you're right.
what's funny, they don't even know. The board of directors don't even know. Like nobody knows, and because they're just the cogs to keep the ball rolling and moving along, and they only know what their little world is. They're not going to see all these pieces move. And like you said, I think most people's perception of crypto is, oh, you own that Bitcoin thing, or you own Doge or something. That's about the extent of it. You're not going to. Maybe they've heard of Pepe or something. It's
true.
they don't understand they don't understand the fundamental layers of structure that's getting built on. Is what I'm getting to. Sorry, Zena, go ahead.
That's fair. No, to your point, I actually fielded a question when I was traveling. Family friend, he's an older gentleman who asked me about crypto because someone told him that I do the crypto show on. He's like, oh, I definitely want to talk to this guy about like Bitcoin. He's like, oh, you think it's good? I'm like, all right, what do you know? And then from his perspective, like the guy's a seasoned investor when it comes to just like being a retail trader over on his side of the fence from probably like last 10, 15, 20 years. But the way that this is a mentality that I've seen echoed, not just through him, but a lot of other people. I'm just using it as an example. He's a sharp guy, but the way that he looks at it is they feel like Bitcoin is just one more thing to invest in the stock portfolio. They don't entirely understand that it's an entirely fundamental type of asset. And I tried telling him, like, look, volatility is a feature, not a bug here. If you're going to get into this kind of stuff, you got to understand that up front. This is not your S&P 500 that you just chuck money into forever and just watch it continually chug up like 7% in forever. Like this is something fundamentally different. So I think there are people that are interested in it from that old guard, but I don't know if they quite view it the way that we view it, which is a totally different asset. It behaves very differently and it operates on a cycle that can be very different from the traditional business cycle or the overall markets.
I would say that, and I think people are scared to step into it because they don't understand it. And this is why I'm invested in Coinbase and I'm invested in Circle and ETFs because more boomers are just gonna, or people that don't get it are just gonna like, I want it, and they're gonna be hearing their portfolio managers tell them like, hey, we kind of recommend now our clients you should be getting into some of this stuff, but based on your risk tolerance and all this other stuff. So that's exactly why that's the theory that I'm taking. I want to be exposed to that because I think it's going to do very well because more people are just going to throw money at this thinking, I don't understand it, but they're telling me it's this new thing. I probably should be invested. And they're going to hear news articles coming out, hitting all-time highs, and they're going to start to be entertained.
That's true. I know my data's a little old on this one, but 2 years ago, I was looking at some stats. I think it was like 50% of financial advisors personally owned crypto or had some sort of exposure to it, but they only recommended it to 6% of their clients.
Because they weren't allowed. Well, they weren't allowed to invest to give it to their. At least some of them weren't really allowed to do it. It was one of those things they weren't really allowed to get into exposing it yet until they but green light. And it really wasn't until this administration stepped in where they got kind of the green light. It was kind of. But if you think about it, maybe it was just another technique to front run. But that's what it looks like to me. I mean, they knew to invest in it, but they couldn't necessarily advise it to their clients. I mean, that kind of sums it up, doesn't it, for gatekeeping?
Pretty much, I think so. Let's see. Quick Google search says a growing number of financial advisors are recommending cryptocurrency to their clients, though it's still not a majority. In Q4 of 2024, about 20% of advisors recommended crypto to all of their clients, and 64% advised it for at least 10% of their clients. So there you go. There's your updated numbers.
But I would say this: I am starting to hear now more talking heads talking about, like big talking heads that you see on CNBC and some of these other big financial institutions and Bloomberg that are actually starting to recommend, getting somewhere. Some of their clients are actually recommending getting up to 20% of the portfolio put into it. So there is definitely a little bit more aggressiveness that's starting to get put out there based on people's risk tolerance, of course.
So
most definitely.
Another interesting quick percentage I pulled earlier, we mentioned the FDIC, one of my favorite topics. The FDIC's the amount of its resources to cover its total liabilities, right? In the form of all of our 250K policies we have with our banks, it fluctuates between 1.3 to 1.15% of its total liabilities on hand at any given time. And so if you ask yourself, why would the banks adopt crypto when they're winning, right? They have all the system under their belt. Why would they do that? Well, that's why. Because the system is already so drastically over-levered, and this is a way that they can move their value into something that can grow against the fiat dollar that has been in play for decades and that they have wrung dry of its value.
Mm-hmm. Say that again, Dave, so people clearly understand what that is, because what you're saying is that they only have what? So of all the money that's in banks, FDIC currently only has how much cash on hand to cover everyone's, if that were to happen, they only have what, 1.25% to cover the 100% that's
Correct.
out there. Yeah, that's what I'll make sure people understand
Correct.
that,
If
because
all the banks go under
yes,
all at the same time, the FDIC
Mhm.
would cover 1% of everybody's money, and so that's
And
why the bankers are,
yep,
are incentivized in the
yep.
long term.
Mm-hmm.
Now, look, they're going to make every cent and every penny that they can on the way towards pushing us
Mm-hmm.
towards adoption, but they
Yep.
have to get us there, or the game's over.
Yep, there's something they're gonna have to do. But you're right, because that's a great point. That over leverage and the derivatives market and all that fun stuff. It just is this fugazi. It's all paper money. It's all like IOUs all over the place. That's all it is.
Well, you can thank fractional reserve banking for that one. But
Yes.
Dave, you brought up an idea there that I think it's slightly contradictory to another very prevalent idea. So you were saying that because these people have control of so much of the system, why change anything? Why go after anything different? Versus maybe some other traditional wisdom would be that if you're in a competitive space, then you need to constantly be looking for new innovations and new projects and products that you can bring to the market so that you can be the first one, make the most money out of it. So for me, it seems like these are kind of competing ideas. But in this space in particular, which one of those ideas do you think wins out more?
Oh, well, look, I wasn't saying that the idea. No, look, I agree. I guess I was trying to play devil's advocate for a moment and say, for someone who is not into crypto, right, and it would be a skeptic, right, of this of our overarching banking adoption thesis, right? That person's question to us may be, why would the banks bother? And I'm trying to sort of respond to that hypothetical question. Forgive me. No, I'm with you. I'm with you. I think we are of one mind on the topic. I was trying to give a potential devil's advocate thesis and response.
No,
I hear you.
That was a good observation there.
The reason I asked the question, though, is because I honestly see both attitudes when it comes to this space in particular. I see that people are looking to actually use crypto to get ahead of the competition, whether it's previously we talked about how some banks are actually using partially Bitcoin backed mid to long term loans as a way to hedge some bets against that. And then also at the same time, we see just the massive pushback against crypto and just trying to make sure that they can really enshrine that the US dollar will never be dethroned by cryptocurrency. I'm seeing competing things out there, and I'm trying to take mental note of like where everything's falling and seeing which one is prevalent right now. So I'm genuinely curious what you guys think.
Well, and I think a big domino to fall was the adoption by the Trump administration, because I think that largely the divide is a generational one. I think people who are, in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, they recall the dollar's value very differently. They were able to extract the value out of the dollar differently than we were able to.
Yes.
And so, they observe the game differently. They imagine they value the U.S. Hegemony over the dollar and sort of as the world's reserve currency. They view that value differently, and they're not as technologically savvy. And so I think, the people in the places of power in some of these financial institutions are going to hold out with some of that mentality. And seeing our government itself embrace it is going to, push them into the future, so to speak, over time.
That's fair. I think that it might not just be the older generation, though. I've been seeing news articles recently about how Generation Z and Gen Alpha actually are not as tech savvy as like millennials and Gen Xers. And that's largely because they didn't have to grow up with the technology. They just adopt where they are now. And it's kind of this idea that it's so complicated and so far ahead. Why bother learning it? And then also, I think these things are just not as user friendly as they used to be. So it's a much steeper learning curve to become like tech savvy in certain areas. And I think cryptocurrency can definitely fall into one of those. And compound onto that, the fact that the younger generation probably feels like their dollar doesn't go as far. They're never really going to be invested in stuff. They're not going to have a 401k. I think it's like, saw a stat recently. It was like at least half of people under the age of 30 have $0 in retirement accounts. So when it comes to stuff like that,
that's dark, man.
That is very dark.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Well,
but it's stuff like that.
The UBI folks, right? Right.
Could be. But
those are
it's
great
stuff
points.
like that. Yeah, that stuff makes me wonder whether or not crypto is going to become adopted in the way that we have. I mean, sorry to dox us all here, but I think I'm the youngest one, and I'm just a hair over 30. So At this point, it's trying to, like, we might be the prime demographic for this, and then the other demographics might struggle with it.
Well, certainly the boomer generation is going to struggle with it because it's just technology in general. It's moving so quick that the boomer generation just cannot keep up. But that's an interesting stat if you said that, because that's a good point. It's funny, the smartphones have made everybody dumb because it does everything for you and it's readily at your fingertips. All technology now. So now you don't have to worry about figuring these things out anymore. By the way, a simple thing is this. Back in the day, you used to know everyone's phone number. How many people's phone numbers do you actually know? I mean, that's a simple thing right there. I mean, how many phone numbers you don't know? It's making you dumber because you're relying on technology so much. And I think that's the underlying problem that you're saying with some of these younger generations that are struggling with it because they don't quite understand, because they haven't been forced to learn things the hard way to figure out how it's done today. But they obviously know how to adapt to the technology quickly because they use it in their daily lives. But then again, the user interface for all these applications and technologies are pretty easy to use because they've dumbed them down into just a few clicks or a few steps away to have a good user experience. But ultimately, all this stuff is leading towards the adoption of the financial institution. You guys hit on a good point. That's real simple. Once the government comes in and tells everybody this is what's going to happen, this is what's going to go on, this is what's going to happen. But what I see what's going to happen down the road, unfortunately, is once they get this stuff in place, eventually the people who are on subsidies or retirement fix, you're going to have to start accepting your payments in X, whatever that is. Could be USDC, could be this, could be that. Because once they incorporate this, you got FedNow in place. You've got you have people that are getting paid through the federal institutions, whether Medicare, Medicaid. You get paid through the states on that, but that comes from a check from the federal government, so they can call the shots on all that, just like other subsidies that go on around the country. So they'll start to they can easily say, hey, if you want this, you're going to have to accept it in this, and you're not going to have a choice. If you want it, you go this, or you can simply forfeit it. What do you want to do? So making people start to adopt to something or not, whether they like it or not, it's coming. And that's going to happen.
That's fair. That's fair. Alrighty, gents. Tell you what, let's take a break real quick. We do have some excellent folks in the chat tonight. We got Jemmy saying, hello, Mr. Z. Happy Monday, everyone. Hey, Jemmy, good to see you. We are all stoked to be back and hanging out with you guys, as well as hanging out with our good buddy, No Money Mike. He says, hey, guys, good to see you, sir. Welcome to the show.
If you guys got any questions, just shoot them in the chats, man. We'll try to hit you guys up. I'll try to answer your guys' questions, certainly.
Absolutely. We're here. Ooh, we got one more sneaking in. Ray, he says, Tracker, man, love your breakdowns. There you go.
Appreciate it,
Hats
Ray.
off to Tracker. All right, gents, tell you what, let's transition into what is my second story, or the one that I researched the most because I'm a legal nerd. And that would be the good old One Big Beautiful Bill that was passed on July 4th. So, as you can probably tell by the thumbnail, crypto is not exactly included in the One Big Beautiful Bill. As a bit of a government guru here, the reality is that there's probably not going to be a lot of bills passed by Congress. In fact, I believe that up at this point, there's been less than 10 bills that have actually made it to the desk of the president so far, which is the lowest amount in the last century, effectively. So that being said, the likelihood of more bills coming is not super high, but we do have confirmation that the Genius Act is in the pipeline, and allegedly they have the votes for it. So we'll have to see if that one actually pans out. But what we did find in this bill is that it doesn't actively affect crypto laws, but does affect the people that affect crypto laws. So coming to us from ChatGPT, after I forced it to read all over 1,000 pages of this bill in terrible government language, by the way, here are the people that were directly affected. The SEC are good friends over there. Well, now they're good friends. Formerly, we had a rocky relationship. They had funding reduced by $300 million, specifically citing bureaucratic overreach related to digital asset enforcement. The mandatory change was the SEC is directed to pause all new rulemaking regarding digital assets pending a GAO review of its crypto classification and enforcement strategy. Number two, we had the CFTC. This is the other side of the coin here. They actually had their funding increased by $40 million with the stated purpose of enhancing enforcement capabilities over the digital commodities market. You might remember from us ranting about the SEC in the past, which is that there are other agencies out there that could theoretically be better suited to handle cryptocurrency law, as opposed to the SEC just trying to shoehorn it into old securities law, even though it doesn't meet the technical definition. Up next, we had the Department of the Treasury, aka FinCEN, or the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. They got a bump of $15 million with an emphasis on expanding blockchain forensic tools. For 4, we have the Internal Revenue Service,
Dina,
everyone's favorite tax
before
bank.
you skip over the Treasury one,
yeah.
keep in mind on the Treasury one, we already know that they're using U.S. Treasuries to buy up, they're using stable coins to buy up U.S. Treasuries. So the fact that they want to increase their $10 million to boost up their security, that makes complete sense. I mean, that's going to be their main attack, if anything. And that's not just for the United States, it's for all other countries that they're going to have to really beef up security. Going to be where the battles are actually going to be fought nowadays.
Fair enough. Alrighty, number 4, the IRS, everyone's favorite taxman, or least favorite. This bill requires the IRS to publish updated guidance on digital asset taxation within 180 days. However, it blocks any new crypto-related tax enforcement initiatives until that guidance is issued, effectively freezing certain audit actions. Additionally, the taxman did get some updated guidance on this one. The proposed legislation for reducing taxes on tips and overtime work was included in this bill. So if you're one of those people that fits into those categories, congratulations. You're probably having a little bit more of a tax credit coming to you, or tax break rather, on top of the Trump tax breaks from the first term that were officially cemented by this bill as well. And number 5, the Office of Science and Technology Policy, directed to produce a national blockchain infrastructure strategy. No direct funding. However, they did specifically name drop blockchain as a technology that they want to get going a little bit more. So, gentlemen, what do you think? Good news, bad news? Who won, who lost?
Does anybody ever win in politics? I mean, when it comes to any deals,
the people that make the bills, they are the winners, or their friends at least.
All right, that's fair. That is fair.
I'll say this.
Go ahead.
Off the top, what I'm seeing is that this bill did not directly influence crypto laws, which that's fine. We have other stuff coming down the pike. We have a lot of other stuff that's still in the works from the executive orders that were issued at the beginning of the year. What this does, though, is it actually adjusts some of the budgets for people that were directly involved in the crypto game for a long time, namely SEC being one of them. They have definitely gotten a bit of the PP stomp from the Trump administration, telling them to, hey, knock it off and get back to the good work that you're doing, instead of just going after instead of trying to act like a law enforcement agency instead of a regulation agency. So dropping funding there makes sense to me. Seeing the FCC get an increase in budget, that's good. Granted, it's only $40 million as opposed to the SEC, who lost $300 million. But at the same time, though, more money is good. IRS, again, I think having the IRS getting directed guidance on how to affect taxes, that makes sense. So hopefully it will stop people from trying to really audit cryptocurrency when the laws are about to change in the very, very near future, if possible. And then after that, seeing the offices of science and technology, those guys actually get a name drop directive to work on blockchain technology. I think these are all indicators that really just follows up everything that happened in the beginning of the Trump administration. So new administration came in, said what they wanted to do. Now we have it on the books, signed by both the House and the Senate, and signed off by the president. So now this is our first official hard stamped documentation showing that they're serious about this kind of stuff.
I think the bill is definitely a step forward in helping these areas out. I'm more curious on what the crypto czars are going to come out and say about everything, because that's going to be the direct department that's going to give us more quick. But you need these bigger macro events or larger bills to get in place. That's going to trickle down into how they're going to utilize the pros that are going to come down the pike for their area. Yeah, it was interesting because going back to this last few years, how can you tax something if you haven't even technically classified it as something? Because the SEC wouldn't come out and classify what a crypto was. So how the hell are you going to tax something that you don't even haven't classified? So what? I mean, legally, it's like, how can you tax? You can't, because you haven't even classified it. But of course, they would always look in the rear. Just on a side note, I know that I don't want to steer from this, but just on a side note, there's nine states that don't even have state income tax, nor do they have taxes on capital gains from cryptocurrencies. That is Alaska, Florida, Nevada, New Hampshire, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Washington, and Wyoming. Just saying, when we talked about front running, the states that seem to be getting ahead of this could start to, it's going to be a fight over people now. And I think the states are realizing it. And we've joked around on this show quite a few times about this. Is like, where's the competition matrix? So they can stack all the states up side by side to see, okay, who has the pros, who doesn't have cons. Just like you stack products comparison to each other, you almost have to start stacking states against each other to see where's the best place to where my money's going to be treated the best.
That's true. I've looked into this one a little bit in the past. When it comes to the capital gains on the state side, it's still unfortunate because you're still paying the tax man. But at the same time, though, it's much less than the federal, because long-term capital gains for federal is 20%. Short-term capital gains is 35%. When it comes to the states, the highest one, I'm pretty sure it was either New York or California, which was up at like 13%. And then after that, it drops off pretty quick. The next one was like 8%. You have a few in the 7%, but the vast majority were actually sub 5%. And there was a good cluster around 3%. And then that was pretty much the bottom until you get to the people that have the literal zero. So is it possible that we actually see people moving around based on capital gains? Potentially, based on how big those capital gains are. But at the same time, though, there are alternative strategies to mitigate against this kind of stuff. It is possible to, again, I'm not a financial advisor here, but I have talked with people who have created tax strategies where you can actually create a trust that handles your crypto. Inside of the trust, it is able to grow capital gains free, under the stipulation that you're not using it to directly enrich yourself. So as long as you're trying to grow the trust, you can avoid taxes that way. So there are these kind of strategies that exist outside of like moving to Puerto Rico and to avoid capital gains tax altogether on crypto. But I think you might have a point here, which is that if you get to that level, it could financially make sense to actually move states. But again, I think the other side of that coin is that if you are at that level, then you're probably looking for those advanced tax strategies where you might not have to move. But again, I'm personally a big fan of geographic relocation based on people moving to the places that support their values and want to help keep those going in the places where they live, as opposed to the classic Californication, where Californians move out because it's too expensive, and then they try to change the new state to become the new California, eventually make that too expensive, and then have to find a new state again. But
we're looking at you, Austin. Austin's great. Austin's great. But to say that, we actually have members in other Infinity chats. We have that they've taken it so far where they had so much money, they created dual citizenships for other countries where they were, very, very prominent for them. So if it's that kind of game-changing money, it's not like you're trying to do anything illegal here. We're not promoting anything illegal. You're trying to just leverage you're just trying to pull all the leverage you can to try to protect as much as your investments as you possibly can, because if you're just giving away to the taxes and you had other options, shame on you.
Yeah, this is not trying to cheat the system. If anything, this is people that are actually trying to play the game at the highest level and stick to the rules that are on the books. And I do think that is very respectable. I mean, if you're the Robert Kiyosaki, he actually made the argument that you as an American have a moral duty to pay the least amount in taxes legally possible so that you can provide more for your family and your own welfare in that standpoint. But again, I think there's a reason that taxes are a massive industry. A, because the tax code is dummy thick and very complicated, but also because there's a lot of money to be made. If you can find a tax man that can save you $1 million, yeah, maybe it makes sense to pay him $100,000 for it.
Yep. Yeah. No, I think it's just another step forward on trying to get some clarity here on where we're going. And I think it's just another phase. Like I said, do we know when the cryptos are coming out with their next statement on next announcements? Do we know when they're going to be discussing anything?
Let's see. The U.S. House Financial Services Committee announces the week of July 14th as Crypto Week.
Okay.
Not entirely sure what this means, but
yeah,
House
I think there's like the Genius Act.
The Clarity Act too. Yep.
There's
Genius, Clarity, Anti-CBDC Surveillance State Act. So not directly from the crypto czars, but as far as Congress goes, they're going to be doing a little bit more work. Not this week, but next week. Classic.
Wait a minute. Say that last one again. Would you say CBDCs what?
The Anti-CBDC Surveillance State Act. I am unfamiliar with this one, but based on the title, I imagine that we might be interested in that one.
Well, I know the administration's made it come out clear that they knew that CBDCs is the ugly boogeyman, right? So they know to stay away from that. So they're not going to touch, and if they are going to have anything remotely close to that, they're sure as hell ain't going to call it CBDCs. So
that is for sure.
That's for sure. Yeah, they're not going to call that.
If politicians are good at one thing, it is that they are good at naming bills exactly what they don't want them to show the public that they're actually doing. So I'm just saying, call it cynical, but I think the track record shows that I'm correct on this one.
That's correct.
All right, let's keep it going. We got one more government-related news topic. The Arizona governor vetoes a crypto reserve bill, citing volatility concerns. For people keeping track, yes, this is the second time that the bill made it to the desk of the governor, but then vetoed it. The TLDR for this one right now is that the governor of Arizona has other political interests that they're trying to get going ahead of anything else. So until they bring her exactly the legislation that she wants, she's pretty much vetoing everything else. And unfortunately, as a result, the Bitcoin reserve, or the crypto reserve bill in this case, has been held hostage. And well, to Texas' credit, when Arizona failed, they swooped in and stole their thunder. So hats off to Texas for being the one to actually pass the first Bitcoin reserve bill, if my memory serves correctly. So there you go. Crypto summer happened in Texas, not Arizona. Apologies to all you good folks of Arizona. I happen to like that state a lot. Some good golf courses out there. What do you guys think? Are we going to see more stuff like this, or are we going to see more political football going on?
Oh, you're going to see tons of this more coming out. I mean, it's going to be insane. It's like everything else. This is why I'm saying, like, if anybody hasn't done it, please share the link or build it. Build a competition matrix across all 50 states. You can help throw Puerto Rico into that mix, and just so people can see and stack it up. I mean, I know we have there's sites out there that tell you which states got what going on in crypto and what they're trying to pass and do, but you're seeing certain ones being very aggressive out there. There's some that are very, very aggressive, and like case in point, what you're showing right here. But there are some that are starting to make. Some states are staying the course. Other states are starting to aggressively break away into other things, like they're trying to adopt crypto. I know the New Jersey, actually, they just New Jersey, one of the local areas in New Jersey partnered with their government with Avalanche Network, and they're tokenizing 3,300 real estate properties there in the New Jersey area. So they're seeing an opportunity to leverage. They say that somehow it's going to cut down like 90% of all the paperwork and everything to do with closing costs and the whole process of closing real estate. You're seeing other states that are starting to break away from the federal guidelines on education. They're saying, nope, you guys can keep your money. We're going to go ahead and start doing it our own way, because you guys are just steering us in the completely wrong direction. And so you're going to see more and more states starting to break. I think you're going to see more and more states. I think it's going to be a very diverse cornucopia of choices that people are going to have across many states on what's your flavor. Whatever you want, you could probably find one that's going to suit you. And I think this is just another one of those things that's going to add to the piece.
I agree. I'm a big fan of federalism over here, and states having their own ability to dictate their laws locally, so they can entice people to move in or de-incentivize people to remain there if they remain contrary to the public opinion and the culture going on in the states. Big fan of this stuff, and I hope to see more of it in the future. Alrighty, with that being said, we have one final article here from our good buddy Dace. So let's see. BlackRock, everyone's favorite. BlackRock iShares Bitcoin Trust holds 3.3% of the total Bitcoin supply. They have amassed a substantial holding of approximately almost 700,000 Bitcoin, valued at around $74 billion as of July 1st. This holding represents roughly 3.3% of the total Bitcoin supply, positioning IBIT as the largest institutional holder amongst the U.S. spot Bitcoin ETFs. This significant reserve highlights BlackRock's aggressive strategy and the strong belief in Bitcoin's potential as a long-term store of value. It also reflects the growing institutional interest in regulated, exchange-traded exposure to crypto assets. The Dace, what are we seeing here? Is this just the a crowning of a new leader, or is this significant to a degree that we don't realize just yet?
Well, it goes hand in hand with some of the stuff that we talked about just off camera as well before we went live, which is their rapid accumulation of Ethereum, right? I think it's hard to stress the importance of the difference of scale between traditional markets and the crypto market as a whole. When you're talking about the biggest players in the traditional markets, which is BlackRock is in that big three list that we talked about earlier, that Tracker gave, Vanguard, State Street, and BlackRock. They've got the amount of capital to really purchase the corner of the market, so to speak, moving forward into the future. And so it seems to me that it would be wise to look at how they are allocating their capital, and also, their forward-looking perspectives in terms of their own investments, and also where their clients are investing. And so, I take a lot of interest in terms of how their customers are investing, and also how they're managing their own portfolio. And like I said, the entanglement with Circle, it's just, we like we said earlier, Circle and BlackRock are very intertwined. I think this is a very coordinated attempt to give those who to give BlackRock and Circle and the folks that run it a real strong corner on the market against, like you said, what globally is not the world's biggest stablecoin. I think when you look at, I don't know if you want to characterize BlackRock as a US-based entity, right? But certainly USDC versus Tether presents a bit of a US versus everybody else, at least, picture. And the US doesn't like being second place in anything, traditionally speaking. And so, yeah, I think this marks, like I said, whether it's our first article with Circle launching the stablecoin bank, and then its investment partner accumulating, record amounts of Ethereum and Bitcoin. These are they are not happening at the same time by accident.
Fair. I think that this is a bit of a pivotal moment as well. Pulling up Arkham over here, we have, apologies, it's a little hard to see, but let's see if we can increase that. Hopefully it's a little easier. All right. Looking at the size of the biggest competitors out there, obviously is Satoshi Nakamoto wallets, about over 1 million Bitcoin in first place. Coinbase, the centralized exchange, at second place. BlackRock now in third place. You'll notice we have Satoshi, the largest centralized exchange for Bitcoin anyways. And then we have the largest ETF fund. And apologies to Michael Saylor, but he did get surpassed. I believe MicroStrategies has, oh gosh, what is it? According to CCN, they say that MicroStrategies has almost 600,000 Bitcoin, but according to Arkham, depending on how you count that, maybe or maybe not including Michael Saylor's personal wallets, it's only about, sorry, that's Ethereum. It's only about 460,000 Bitcoin. But I think that this is a bit of a pivotal moment, because this is where we're seeing traditional finance really starting to take over a little bit here. This is what we talked about for a long time, saying what happens when traditional finance gets in. Do they compete? Do they just outright win? I think that this is that point in the race where they've actually edged ahead.
Here's a crazy thing here. Coinbase was founded in 2012, right? Nobuo Nakamoto, obviously the inventor or creator, there's a lot of speculation there, but that makes a lot of sense why that person or that entity owns the most. Go back to that list again, Zena, to show that list. Coinbase was around since 2012, but BlackRock, that trust, to put it in perspective, was only created just recently in, what was it, 2022? Is that when it was created? I'm looking at, yeah, it was created. I'm sorry.
I know the ETFs went live late January 2024. So if you go off that timestamp, the ETFs are only about a year and a half old, effectively.
Sorry, 2000. All right, yeah, you're correct. But in 2022 is when BlackRock launched this BlackRock Private Bitcoin Trust. So when they launched it, that the iShare the iBit you're looking at here, that's the one that's owning it. So from 2022. They've already accumulated and became the third largest buyer. Is what I'm saying is the how quickly is what I'm trying to get at. The velocity and how BlackRock is accumulating, not just Bitcoin, but now Ethereum. I mean, that's something to take note. And I think this is one thing that people are a little concerned about, because I know people have brought this up too, is if these entities become bigger, like, I don't know, BlackRock, like they said, they have endless deep pockets. The money is no problem. It's like the Federal Reserve. Their money is never an issue. So they can essentially, the question is, how much do they want to accumulate? I'd love to know how much they want to accumulate. Ideally, I know if they actually read all of it, but they're still going up against other entities like countries that have been buying this. So I'm just curious to know, what is their target that they're thinking that they would love to get to? realistically, of course, because one big problem that people are concerned about with Bitcoin or Ethereum is the validators. So if you have these big entities starting to buy it up, could they cause a potential disruption or some, wrinkles and everything with being that many, owning that much per share, thus that percentage of validators? That's another, has been a threat that's come out there. But I think in the fact with Bitcoin, it's so diverse across not just entities, but countries. So I think it's too spread out at this point. And I think that's another reason why a lot of countries like your BRIC countries are starting to accumulate Bitcoin aggressively and trading in non-US dollars. Keep in mind, that's just started happening a couple of years ago, which had never happened, certainly not in the petrodollar being traded in that. So you're definitely seeing I think what I'm trying to say is Bitcoin, I think, is more protected from manipulation to the validators. Ethereum still is okay, but I would say it's probably got a better chance of maybe accumulating Ethereum at an alarming rate. But even then, they would have to accumulate so much to even have that kind of percentage control over it. So I'm just trying to play devil's advocate on this piece, just like Dace was on the other piece that we were talking about, because that is one concern people have out there. But I don't think they understand how much they'd have to accumulate. We're talking, essentially, BlackRock could have enough money. They probably, I'd hate to know how much money they have disposable that they could, with assets and stuff. Is it in the trillions?
I think it definitely is at this point.
So
multiple trillion is not surprising. By the way, on screen right now, we do have the Ethereum tracker from Arkham. Up at the top, White Hat DAO. Then we have Arbitrum, Coinbase, Binance, the Dark DAO, and then BlackRock also beating out Ethereum. So there you go. Your two largest funds right there, BlackRock and Grayscale at 1.75 million Ethereum and 1.7 million Ethereum right there.
Right, and keep this in mind. Coinbase, obviously, and Binance are two central exchanges, so they need to accumulate that, a lot of it, because they have to satisfy customers. They have to have it on books. They're also, Coinbase specifically is also using it because they are kind of the custodian for a lot of these spot ETFs and giving those funds feeding into the ETFs. Like, these institutions aren't going out there buying Bitcoin and Ethereum spot on the chain. They're accumulating it through entities, mainly Coinbase for the US. I'm sure Binance is certainly involved in some of that going on with other countries, because I always look at this. Binance to me is more international. Coinbase is more US based, of course. Now, Arbitrum being an L2, layer 2 on the Ethereum network, I'm curious to know how Arbitrum, why is their strategy to own this much Ethereum? And that could fall under staking rewards or other LPs that they're putting out potentially. But that's that's kind of surprising to me. I did not expect to see Arbitrum at the top of the list.
Well, according to Arkham, they're listed as a smart contract platform, so maybe that's the reason for it. But yeah, that is an excellent question. Figure out why Arbitrum is up there as the effectively the number 2 right behind this White Hat DAO. Alrighty, gentlemen. Any final thoughts on any of the topics of the show for this evening?
Not necessarily topics, just letting know our members who are with us. Jay did a great stream today live. I was listening. I was kind of just like ninja listening, but he did a great job. Dove into a lot of good key points, went to some articles, went into some really key moments that you need to be looking at this week and next week that are going to be pivotal moments that are going to be as far as dates to have circled on your calendars. He also dove into heavy TA into Bitcoin and Ethereum. So a lot of good stuff was provided there. So a lot of good levels and a lot of good, opportunity whether you're bearish or bullish cases. You did a good job on laying that out for everybody. So if you're a member, please go check it out. It's already in the Telegram threads for you guys to check out.
For sure. And by the way,
you want to do a sandwich plug?
Absolutely. For the folks out there that are not members yet, but would like to be, head on over to walktheblockndf.com. And that is where you can find our membership tab. But just know the waters get rough, so don't sail through them alone. Come join us as we navigate digital finance together. Private mentorship, exclusive live streams, Q&As, go from beginner to intermediate to expert with us. We would love to have you there. Join the Telegram. Hang out with our excellent community and catch all of that fantastic information that we were just talking about, whether it's Jay putting out those streams or we are building up our content of Crypto 101 topics and diving into some more advanced topics in the near future as well. Alrighty.
And Xanth has got one already done for it. So everybody's asking that question, why would I get into crypto? I think this will kind of satisfy everybody. When you get those questions from people, whether you're already in crypto and you get tired of asking the same questions, these are great videos. Are going to be PowerPoint presentation, voice overlays. You can just shoot it to people. They're not going to be just behind a paywall. They're going to be out there on our YouTube channel. You can just shoot people links and then let it do its talking for you, because we've done a lot of thought about a lot of this and diving into the details and trying to lay it out from somebody who is brand new coming into crypto, have no clue what they're even looking at, and really asking that question, why would they care? And then we've got other ones we're putting together here, hopefully to have those out, and then at least start cranking those out, maybe 1 or 2 over the next few weeks. We'd like to get them out, so be on the lookout for those too.
But
those are some solutions we have for the people with general questions. If you have specific questions and you would like to join our members channel, we have a live Q&A for members only this Friday with myself and Tracker in the Telegram. So that will be for members only, but catch us there. And then again here next week, Monday.
That's a good one, Dave. Appreciate that.
Love to hear it. And like Jemmy says, very great stream. Got a lot of info. Appreciate you guys. We appreciate you as well.
Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, I want to say what we're trying to do here is, yes, are there other streamers out there? There are. Are there other contents out there? Are. I think we're providing a pretty cheap price here for what you guys are going to be getting. And it really is, we're trying to create more of a white glove service, all shapes and forms. People that have come in that have been in crypto since 2017, that know it all. Hey, we're looking for the challenge. Challenge us on what you know and everything. And by far, once you're in a community of people that are trying to work together, you're going to cover more ground. You're just going to cover so much more ground. That's the easiest way I can put it. When I first came into crypto, I probably was spending anywhere between 7 to 8 hours a day for the first year. And I was drinking from a fire hose, doing a lot. Now, keep in mind, I do have a computer science background. I'm a programmer, so technology doesn't scare me. And I'm not saying it needs to scare you, but I'm just saying it would have been a lot easier if I had a community there to bounce ideas and questions off of, because crypto it's starting to get more regulation. It's still the wild, wild west, and you still got to know where to go, what area to stay in. Like, we try to help to put the guardrails up in areas that you need to be cautious on for a lot of things. And there's a lot of products out there too. And then with this landscape, there's going to be changing even more. We also go into the how to use your, if you're in a 401k, your traditional retirement, what options you have out there as well. A lot of people don't even know what even exists out there. They know there's might be a few ETFs, but there's other things out there as well. Just saying. Yeah, if you can, you can. If not, then so be it.
Fair enough. And if not, well, guess what? We're still streaming Mondays, 8 p.m. Eastern time every week, as long as one of us isn't off traveling the world. But yeah, crypto is a very deep topic. There's a lot of different ways you could go. Shoot, I remember back when I was first getting into the deep stuff here, and just watching the crypto or whiteboard crypto videos over on his YouTube channel. That's a great resource as well, by the way. But yeah, there's a lot of ways to go. The more people you can have on your team, the more topics you can research, the more areas you can get expertise and really just collaboratively work together. But that being said, yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am Zenith. This is Tracker and Dace. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And until we catch you guys next time, I hope that all you guys continue to keep a weather eye on that horizon, as well as we keep a weather eye on the charts. And all you guys, hope you navigate digital finance safely. Till then, we'll catch you guys next time. Everyone, good night.